It's no secret now that voting rights are under threat all across the country. Many states, particularly conservative led states, are imposing voting rights measures that restrict voting from primarily Democratic leaning districts and or communities of color. Now this doesn't just include black people, it also includes people of any type of minority outside of the white majority of the United States. But there's something I wanted to talk about here because not only is like the PRO Act, well, the PRO Act is actually a pro-union bill, but the Voting Rights Act. This shouldn't even be a thing right now because there's something called the 15th Amendment to the Constitution. And I want to read that to you guys right now so that you'll understand why all of these, voting rights or restriction of voting rights laws in these red states should automatically be struck down in court. And I will quote you. Article 15 of the U.S. Constitution. Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Wow, why aren't former convicts allowed to vote right now, right? Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Well, good luck with that. As we know, Congress can't even vote to decide which best way to urinate in the toilet. Like they're really going to do that for voting rights. They don't care about voting rights. You get people like Amy Klobuchar, like Eric Swalwell, like, God, who else has been out there just posturing and grandstanding, not really going to do anything about it. Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, all these people saying voting rights are important and we must include everybody. We must do this as a Congress. Stop with your words and just do the fucking thing already. Well, we all know they're not going to, right? Why? Because they are slaves to the profit motive. Which basically leads me to what I was saying in the thumbnail that you saw. Capitalism hinders voting rights. How so? Because democracy is an Achilles heel, or even the Achilles heel of capitalism. Because once people have a democratic say in how society operates, basically people are going to try to make it as fair as possible for everybody, because everybody's involved. Now, sometimes you'll have one direction or the other, but more often than not, you're going to get the right decision, one that works for pretty much everybody. So, that means that the minority, the capital class, the owner class, they are not going to be as wealthy and powerful in a democratic setting as they would be in a fascistic authoritarian setting. This is why these states are hindering voting rights, because they believe in capitalism way more than they believe in democracy. So now we know where they stand, at least. And this is mainly coming from the Republican Party. Because the Republican Party is basically the most diehard capitalist party in power anyway. The Libertarians are also diehard capitalists. But the Democratic Party wants more people to vote because the more people vote, the more Democrats get into power. But here's the problem. The Democratic Party now has been mostly bought and owned by corporate America and by billionaires. So even if we did what we did in, 2010? Was it 2010? Or was it 2006, 2008? It was around there. But the Democrats got a super majority. And we didn't even get a public option, never mind universal health insurance. We got a right-wing forced to purchase private insurance plan, right? That was from the Heritage Foundation. It's what Mitt Romney did up in Massachusetts when he was governor up there. So this came from a right-wing think tank. Force people to buy private insurance. Private insurance, where people can price gouge you. Force them, through the law, to spend their money on people who can arbitrarily set the price however they want. How does that make sense, right? The government isn't supposed to operate like a business or a lapdog to business. It's not even the same thing as business. It's supposed to operate as a conduit for the will of the people. But of course, as we know, because they take money, hence why I put the headline there, Capitalism Hinders Voting Rights, because they're getting all this money from anti-democratic institutions, Like, hey, we're going to give you all these campaign donations. We'll give you a nice cushy job as a lobbyist or as a member of our board where you'll make millions of dollars when you leave Congress or leave the Senate, whatever. Well, then, why should they vote in favor of voting rights when that means that the people can just vote easier, more of us can vote, and that means that they won't be as wealthy and powerful as they could be otherwise with the system as it is now? Capitalism and democracy are like oil and water. I've been saying this for a long time. So we really need to focus not just on voting rights, but we need to focus on replacing the current political infrastructure and political system so that we can inherently expand voting rights, not just through a constitutional, you know, reorganizing and revisiting, but just by it, just systemically, just in an infrastructurally based way. Because as the system exists right now, it's all about money. It's all about profit. So that's why voting rights are not being put front and center. Because the elected officials know, wait a minute, if more people vote, then I'm not going to be rich and I'm not going to be powerful, at least not to the degree that I would love to be. So why should I support that? Take Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema. They take millions of dollars from all these people. That's why they voted down the $15 minimum wage. And you get idiots like Manchin on there going, well, I've been trying everything, I want it to pass so bad, but, I just couldn't get them to go along, so I can't support it. Well, we know what that jackass wants, right? He just wants nothing passed so he can continue to make millions off of the taxpayers. That's why I said about abolishing the Senate. Well, if he was a representative in that arrangement, we would be recalling him and removing him, like, right now. I mean, look at our senators in this state: Mark Warner, Tim Kaine. If this system I outlined were in place, not only would their jobs not exist, but if they were members of the overall legislative body that's been condensed and kind of expanded as well, well, then I would be pushing for a recalling of those two representatives to be like, hey, what the hell have you done for us? Look at the results from the way you've been trying to legislate and how you've governed as well as senators, as a governor, Tim Kaine. So, in order to get voting rights, in order to get universal suffrage of American citizens on voting, you have to change the whole system. You cannot have democracy and capitalism in the same room and expect them to be able to coexist. They just can't do it. Say what you will about the Scandinavian countries, they balance those acts better than damn near anybody else. But it's not perfect. No system is ever perfect. No, not even the systems that I've been proposing. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Nothing can be perfect. You show me someone who thinks their idea is perfect, and I'll show you someone with their head up their ass. But we need to change the system to by default, include everyone. And it's like that 15th Amendment that I quoted earlier. This shouldn't even be a discussion right now. It really, really shouldn't. Because the gerrymandering that happens primarily in Republican districts is aimed at people of color. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't say in the 15th Amendment that you can't gerrymander, you can't deny voting rights based on political affiliation. That's a problem. That's where gerrymandering can still be used. So what you need is an expansion of that 15th Amendment to include all demographics possible, except for, of course, people, who are not legal citizens. So that's it. So it says people of, different colors or condition of servitude, race, but it doesn't say ethnicity, it doesn't say political affiliation, it doesn't say sexual orientation. So it needs to say those things. This is another reason why we need to have a mandatory constitutional convention by our legislative body once every 20 years to make sure that this document is a living document and isn't just reduced to being a political football or just some literary relic of history. So getting voting rights together for all American citizens is not an easy task, and you can't do it with this Voting Rights Act. It may just be a drop in the bucket in the right direction, but ultimately it's not going to solve the overall problem. We cannot have capitalism and democracy and expect to be a functioning society. We got to choose one or the other. That's why I say I am pro-democracy, which means I am against the way capitalism is right now. You know, some people will call me a social democrat. I call myself more of a democratic socialist, but whatever. I got a segment coming up on what socialism means today. I know that tends to be a boogie word for a lot of people, but trust me, once that video comes out, and hopefully you will understand what it really means and how people across the political landscape really agree on a lot of issues coming from these political circles. So, you know, let's focus more on the bigger picture when it comes to voting, systemic change, not just putting a band-aid over a gaping gangrenous wound. And if we want, and let's just get serious. We've got to win this. Democracy, as it, to the extent that it exists in this country right now, is already under threat. After the anniversary of January 6th, you know, it's getting closer and closer to the point where people are saying it's going to be an all-out coup and democracy will be dead. I don't know. That might actually be hyperbolic, but you know, let's not take any chances on that. Let's aim for full systemic reform. Let's make it so that voting rights across the board is the best way forward, the only way forward, to make certain that authoritarianism and fascism can never rear its ugly head in this country again.